My son said he was afraid of me, while looking directly into the lens. What he didn't know was that his line had been written 3 days earlier. I watched the clip 100 times, hoping to catch even a flicker of his real thoughts behind those coached eyes. But it was clean, too clean. Liana had always known how to stage a scene. Soft lighting, gentle tears, the illusion of chaos with none of the mess. The internet called her brave, a mother surviving, a woman reclaiming her power. What they didn't see was the production schedule taped to the fridge, the rehearsals, the edits. But I did. I saw everything, and I recorded it all. She used our kids for engagement. Now I'll use the truth to set them free. The smell hit me first, burnt plastic, acrid and metallic, coiling through the air like something dead. I followed it to the kitchen, where sunlight carved harsh rectangles across the tile floor. My passport lay on the stovetop, or what was left of it, a curled, blistered husk, its navy blue cover melted into a greasy black smear on the induction surface. Smoke trailed lazily from the corner, too thin to trigger the alarm, but thick enough to sting my throat. Across the room, my wife sat cross-legged on the marble counter like it was a lifestyle shoot. Liana, phone in one hand, smoothie in the other, almond milk and spinach, or whatever she was pushing this week. Her eyes didn't lift from the screen. "I did it for you," she said, like she was talking about throwing out expired yogurt. "You don't need it. Zurich's not going anywhere." I stared at the remains of my passport. "You burned it." She finally looked up, blinking slowly. "I saved you. That trip's just stress. This deal? That pressure? You've got kids, Mark. A life. A brand. You should stay grounded." She said it like I was a balloon drifting off, and she was the one holding the string. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that Zurich wasn't just a trip. It was the culmination of 15 years of coding in basements and missing birthdays and pouring every ounce of myself into a platform the world had just started to notice. Tomorrow I was supposed to sign a deal that would put $1.8 billion in my account. But I said nothing. I watched the smear of what used to be my identity curl at the edges, releasing its last gasp of smoke. Liana had done this deliberately, strategically, not from fear, but from control. She'd seen the power shifting, felt the tectonic change, and she couldn't stand the idea of me stepping fully into it. Not without her narrative. "I had to make a choice," she said, sipping. "And I chose us." I didn't respond. I didn't scream. That's what she wanted, something she could film, a scene, content. Instead, I walked to the sink, filled a glass with cold water, and drank. Slowly. Then I looked at her and smiled. Not warmly, not angrily, just long enough to make her shift on the counter. Just enough to make her wonder what I was thinking. Because I was done reacting. I would not run. I would not rage. I would erase every version of me she'd ever tried to rewrite. One line at a time. The walls were thinner than I remembered. I stood just outside the office door, half shielded by the staircase, listening to my own disintegration broadcast in 1080p. "He hasn't been himself," Liana said into the ring light, her face artfully pale, voice dipped in tremble. "The pressure, the late nights. I think he's breaking." A pause, perfectly timed. The chat window fluttered with a wave of sympathy. A viewer wrote, "You're so brave to share this." Another chimed in, "Men don't know how to handle real emotions." And then, "Protect your kids, girl. That's the priority." She angled the camera slightly, giving the illusion of intimacy, a casual Sunday in a sweatshirt with sleeves just long enough to cover her wrists. I've tried everything, she said. But when someone's spiraling, you can't always save them. Her voice cracked. Practiced. A single tear gleamed under the studio light before it reached her cheek. I clenched my jaw. Spiraling. I was about to become one of the wealthiest tech founders in the country. But she was right about one thing. I wasn't the man she remembered. Not anymore. This wasn't a cry for help. It was a performance. A prelude. Liana had been staging this for weeks, maybe months. Planting seeds. Testing narratives. Little stories about stress, tension, insomnia. Quiet posts about mental load and emotional labor. Now she was pulling the ripcord, and her audience, hundreds of thousands strong, was already cheering her fall. I stepped back, careful not to creak the floorboard, and made my way to the guest room. I locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened my laptop. I watched her stream from behind the firewall. Same shaky voice. Same curated sadness. Comments flooding in like rain. I wasn't just losing control of the narrative. I was being rewritten in real time. No one knew the full truth. That I'd spent a year quietly restructuring my company, separating assets, building fail-safes. That tomorrow, even without Zurich, the money would land. But what use was power if the world already believed I was a threat? I stared at the screen and saw not just a woman selling grief, but a campaign in motion. She wasn't just leaving me. She was erasing me, branding me, building her new arc on my ashes. She would say it was for her safety, for the kids, for mental health. And the worst part? People would believe her. People always did when the villain kept his voice down. But I had one thing she didn't know. The old version of me, the quiet one, he was gone. I'd spent my life building platforms. Now I was going to use one. Not to explain, to reveal. The garage was colder than I remembered, the scent of dust and engine oil grounding me in a past I'd buried under layers of corporate polish. Overhead, a single bulb buzzed weakly, casting a pale cone of light over the mess I used to call my workspace. Cardboard boxes, tangled cords, disassembled prototypes. And in the far corner, under a drop cloth stiff with time, sat the machine I needed. My first build, an ancient ThinkPad held together by electrical tape and spite. No cloud sync, no automatic updates, no backdoors. A digital fossil, and the last place no one would think to look. I wiped dust off the keyboard and powered it up. It groaned, then flickered to life. The login screen greeted me with an old prompt. Enter to create. This was where it had all started. Before investors. Before press. Before Liana. Back when I believed in tools that served people, not the other way around. I typed in my credentials and waited. The desktop loaded. No fancy UI, just directories and code. But one folder sat untouched since the last time I swore I'd never open it again. Veritas_alpha. I clicked. Inside, lines of code blinked at me like a pulse returning. Veritas was a prototype I'd shelved during my second year of building the company. Too invasive, too controversial. It analyzed speech patterns, tonal shifts, context mismatches in public content to detect deception. At the time, I told myself it was unethical. Now I realized it was just premature, because the world had caught up, and Liana had just declared war on truth. Veritas wouldn't just show what she was saying. It would show what she meant. The gaps, the edits, the contradictions between her words and her behavior across videos, posts, even interviews. But it needed a modern framework, updates I couldn't build alone. That's when I thought of her. Ellie Brown, once our lead on cybersecurity, fired after Liana accused her of surveillance paranoia. I hadn't defended her. I'd been too busy playing peacemaker, keeping the investors calm, keeping Liana quiet. And now, Ellie was the only person I trusted to help build something this raw. I found her contact buried in an old email thread. I hesitated, then typed, "Need to talk. It's important. I was wrong. You were right." No answer. I didn't expect one. But 10 minutes later, the reply came. "You have 5 minutes to explain. If it's bullshit, I vanish." I stared at the screen, then wrote, "She's using me to build her brand. I'm going to burn it down, and I need you to help write the code." 3 dots blinked. Then, where? I smiled. The machine was alive again. And so was I. We met in a corner booth at Haven, a cafe so unremarkable it felt like a deliberate choice. Neutral lighting, minimal noise, and a clientele more interested in emails than eye contact. Ellie walked in without hesitation, like she'd memorized the exits before opening the door. She looked sharper than I remembered. Hair buzzed short now, black hoodie, no makeup. The kind of armor you wear after the world shows you its teeth. She slid into the seat across from me, didn't bother with pleasantries. "Talk. I owe you 1,000 apologies," I said. "Skip them," she cut in. "You're here because your wife finally turned on you. Let's not pretend this is redemption." I nodded. "Fair." She took out her phone, but didn't unlock it. Just held it, watching me. What did she do? She burned my passport. Ellie blinked, then huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. "That's poetic." She also staged a live stream, told a few 100,000 people I was unraveling, then filed for restricted access to the kids. Her jaw tightened. "She's not just erasing you. She's constructing a martyrdom arc. I need Veritas. You said it was too dangerous." "It is, and I want it." We sat in silence while our coffees went cold. Then she leaned in, her voice lower. "You're not the only one she's tried to silence," Ellie said. "She had an agency flood my DMs with threats. Got me blacklisted from 3 firms. But I've been building. Quietly. I took the framework from Veritas and layered new context engines on top. Emotion synthesis, audience alignment tracking, the works. You kept it. I rebuilt it. Called it V2. Never launched. No platform wanted something that exposed the skeletons in their influencers' closets." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a slim external drive. Tapped it twice on the table. "This is everything. But if we do this, we go all in. No press. No soft reveals. We run the model, gather the data, and drop it all at once. No wiggle room. No deniability." "Agreed," I said. "I don't want revenge. I want precision." She smirked. "That's why I answered your message." We walked out together, the sky bruised with oncoming rain. I opened the passenger door to my car and paused. "She's not scared of being exposed," I said. "She's scared of losing the version of me she invented." Ellie nodded. "Then it's time to introduce the real one." We drove away in silence. But the hum beneath it was electricity. Something was waking up. Ellie's workspace was nothing like the sterile data labs I'd grown used to. Her home office buzzed with chaotic genius. Whiteboards covered in arrows. Post-its like constellations. The scent of solder and lavender oil hanging thick in the air. She dropped the drive onto her rig like a priest laying a blade on the altar. "This is how the truth bleeds," she said, fingers already dancing across keys. She'd updated Veritas beyond what I'd imagined. The new engine, V2, didn't just detect deception. It measured the emotional dissonance between a speaker's tone, micro-expressions, and audience engagement. If a lie looked convincing but didn't feel true to viewers, it flagged it. "Let's feed her in," Ellie said. We uploaded Liana's 10 most viewed videos from the last month. Yoga confessions, car confessionals, a teary-eyed monologue in her closet about fearing for the kids. All hits, all monetized, all lies. Within minutes, V2 lit up in red. Out of 10 videos, 7 scored above 0.8 on the fabrication index. Anything over 0.5 meant heavy emotional manipulation. Her heartfelt stream about my alleged outburst clocked a 0.93. She's good, Ellie muttered. Too good. She's been rehearsing for years. More concerning than the scores were the overlays. V2 could cross-reference timestamps with engagement spikes, showing when people felt most compelled to comment. Turns out, the more she lied, the more they loved her. We compiled a dossier, heat maps, annotated transcripts, emotion curves. Clinical, inarguable, devastating. We leak it? Ellie asked. Not yet, I said. One hit won't stop her. She'll spin it, cry harder, make it about harassment. I'd seen Liana weaponize victimhood like a scalpel. She never lashed out. She suffered. On camera. In high definition. And people always rewarded her for it. Then my phone buzzed. Court notification, temporary restriction filed. She'd claimed I raised my voice, frightened the children. Attached were 2 audio clips, both stripped of context. Me on the phone, mid-argument with a supplier. Spliced together, looped for tension. I scrolled through the comment section. One message read, "That tone? Red flag." Another said, "Imagine what he's like off camera." And then came, "Protect her. Believe her." Ellie looked up. We're not just fighting lies. We're fighting performance. She's not trying to win, I said quietly. She's trying to end the game before I even sit down. Ellie closed the laptop. Then let's build a new table. We agreed on one thing. No more waiting. We needed something bigger. Not just exposure. A full system breach. Next move. Find someone inside her machine. His name was Chris Lang. On paper, he was Liana's executive assistant. In practice, he was her fixer. Social calendar gatekeeper. NDA enforcer. Email ghostwriter. Comment moderator. The invisible hand behind her flawless feed. Ellie found him through a buried Slack archive she'd kept from her old days in the company. His old account still pinged occasionally on a shared server. His last message had been a single emoji, firecracker, dated 2 weeks before she was pushed out. I think he's breaking, Ellie said, scrolling through his lockdown socials. But we need to hit the right nerve. We crafted a message. Not blackmail. Not sympathy. Just a precise trigger. You built the house. She took the credit. When it burns, will you still be the butler? He replied 4 minutes later. Meet me. No phones. No names. No promises. We met at a storage unit just outside city limits. He wore a hoodie and sunglasses despite the fluorescent lights. Tall, fidgety. Looked like a man who hadn't slept through a night since Liana started trending. I'm not doing this because I like you, Chris said, pacing. You didn't defend Ellie. You let it happen. I know, I said. That's why I'm listening now. He stopped pacing. She's not spontaneous. Not raw. Every post, every story, every quote, it's all scripted. Me and a digital strategist wrote half her breakdowns. When she said she cried all night, she was editing thumbnails. Ellie stepped forward. We need proof. He pulled out a thumb drive, dropped it into my hand. 3 months of planning docs, target engagement reports, and budget sheets. Payment breakdowns to the PR firm that ghost posts from burner accounts. The same ones that leaked your audio. I stared at the drive. She paid for the outrage, I whispered. She built it, Chris corrected. down to the hashtags. Ellie connected the drive to her laptop. The files loaded like evidence in a war tribunal, spreadsheets mapping narrative arcs, mood boards labeled empath rage cycle, and one file simply titled, The Fall of Mark. That document was a playbook. Quotes from me pulled from emails, schedules of my meetings, suggested times to drop content for maximum viral overlap, a calculated takedown. She thinks people love her honesty, Chris said, but they're addicted to her version of your collapse. He looked at me. Burn it down. And this time, don't flinch. He left without another word. Ellie stared at the screen, her expression unreadable. This isn't just a smear campaign, she said finally. This is brand warfare. No, I replied. This is identity theft. And we're taking it back. We weren't just building a case anymore. We were designing a reckoning. We called it Operation Cold Light. No flashy titles. No dramatic music. Just the raw, clinical exposure of lies told so often they'd become truth by repetition. Ellie assembled the footage like a surgeon. Side-by-side comparisons of Liana's live streams and the planning docs Chris gave us. Voiceovers reading her impromptu, captions verbatim from pre-scheduled drafts. Heat maps of engagement metrics that lined up perfectly with emotional bait timing. We layered in Veritas scans, animated overlays showing emotional dissonance spikes as she performed. One moment she claimed to be exhausted. The AI read elevated anticipation. Another time she whispered about trauma. Her micro-expressions danced with rehearsed precision. Then came the core, a timeline of Liana's digital takedown of me, paired with Chris's leaked file, The Fall of Mark. Every anonymous leak, every out-of-context quote, every strategic drop. Timestamped. Sourced. Exposed. At the end of the video, we cut to black. One line in white text. How much of what you believe is designed? We launched it anonymously through a dummy nonprofit page Ellie had prepped, Center for Digital Transparency, a name vague enough to sound real, sharp enough to raise eyebrows. The first 10,000 views trickled in slow, mostly tech and media nerds. Then someone dropped it into a Reddit thread called #InstaDeceit. From there, it lit like a fuse. Within 6 hours, the video hit 500K. By nightfall, it passed 1 million. I watched the wave break from my living room, phone buzzing with texts from contacts I hadn't spoken to in years. Dude, is this about Liana? You need to speak out. This changes everything. Ellie called from her apartment. She's gone live. Of course she had. Liana's face filled my screen, flushed, glassy-eyed, breathless. She was crying, but not the trembling kind. It was defiant sobbing. Righteous. Performed perfectly for vertical framing. I don't know who made that video, she said. But this is harassment. Lies. I've spent years building a safe space, and now I'm being hunted. Tens of thousands watched, some weeping with her, others already dissecting her performance like vultures over a warm carcass. She's playing the martyr card, Ellie said. And it's working. For now. I scrolled the live chat. Mixed reactions. Confusion. Doubt. But for the first time, questions. One viewer asked, "Did anyone fact-check that breakdown video?" Another commented, "That planning doc looked real AF." And someone else wrote, "Why is she suddenly crying after every call-out? We didn't need to win the war tonight. We just needed people to look twice." And they were. The illusion was cracked. Now all we had to do was keep the light pouring in. The press didn't hesitate. Within 24 hours of the leak, 3 major outlets ran headlines like "Influencer Under Fire for Alleged Emotional Fraud," and is the internet's favorite wife a lie? Liana's name wasn't printed, but everyone knew. The video hadn't named her either, but anonymity was no defense when the timeline matched her brand too precisely. Liana struck back fast. Her team blasted out cease and desist threats to any blog that shared the video. A wall of lawyers, press agents, and her longtime therapist formed around her like riot shields. That night, she dropped a glossy pre-recorded video. No tears this time, no filters either. She sat in front of a window, hair tied back, voice calm, expression hollow. "I'm being stalked," she said. "Digitally, emotionally, financially. My privacy has been weaponized. My children's faces are being dragged through someone else's vendetta." She paused, perfectly timed. "I have filed for full custody. I cannot in good conscience allow my children to remain in an unsafe narrative, manipulated by a man who hides behind code and silence." I watched jaw-locked. The script had shifted. She wasn't just the victim now. She was the protector. Then came the kicker. Screenshots from a supposed private journal where she described being watched, controlled, isolated in a castle of code. Screenshots that went viral within hours, posted anonymously but quickly amplified by her fan accounts. Pages of handwritten trauma, highlighted, underlined, emotionally devastating. Ellie got to work. "The metadata's a joke," she said. "Tablet generated. Timestamped 2 days ago." She staged it. We could prove it, but it didn't matter. In the court of public opinion, emotion always outweighed evidence. And the journal spread like wildfire. The next morning, I received the email I'd been dreading. Temporary visitation suspended pending formal hearing. Liana had won her first real battle. She'd weaponized motherhood in panic, used the children as armor, and stabbed from behind it. Ellie paced my living room like a strategist mid-campaign. "If we drop everything now, the raw files, the calendar leaks, the fake journal metadata, it'll look retaliatory." Desperate. "She's bleeding sympathy," I said. "We hit now, and we become exactly the image she's selling." We stood in silence. Then I said, "We need a story." Ellie frowned. "We have a story." "No, we have proof." "That's not the same. She's performing a narrative. We need our own." She studied me for a beat. "You're not wrong." Liana had always understood the real war wasn't in facts. It was in framing, in owning the language before anyone else could define you. I opened my laptop and typed the first email to a journalist I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. It read, "I'm ready to speak, but only once, and only if the camera rolls from the first word." The studio was bare, just concrete walls, a single overhead mic, and a tripod camera blinking red. No glam squad, no softbox lighting, no curated angles. Just me and the journalist I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Reina Salazar, known for gutting billionaires and humanizing whistleblowers, often in the same breath. "I only have one rule," I said before we began. "You film everything. No off-record. No resets. No cutting around the parts that make me human." She nodded once. Pressed record. "Who is Liana?" she asked. I took a breath. "She's the mother of my kids," I said slowly. "She's also the architect of a digital persona that no longer requires reality to exist." Reina didn't blink. "What happened?" "She turned pain into product," I said. "First hers, then mine, then the pain of our children, all packaged and posted." I told her everything. About the passport, the live streams, the leaked audio, the script labeled the fall of Mark. Not in anger, not to accuse, just to frame the silence I'd kept for so long. I'm not here to cancel her, I said. I'm here to show what happens when narratives become currency and people become collateral. Reina watched me carefully, asking questions that made me pause, reflect, sometimes wince. She didn't play softball, and I didn't ask her to. You built a tool to detect dishonesty, she said. You could have used it on anyone. Why her? Because she used me as the foundation of a fiction. Because no one else could show what it cost from the inside. By the end of the interview, I felt raw, but not exposed. Just unarmored. Reina shut off the camera and didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, people will divide on this. You know that, right? I don't need everyone, I said. I just need truth to be louder than the algorithm, for once. She nodded. The interview dropped 72 hours later. The internet exploded. This isn't a takedown, one early commenter wrote. It's a confession, and it's the most honest thing I've seen all year. Finally, someone's saying it. Silence isn't guilt. Sometimes it's survival. You can see the weight in his body. He's not acting. He's remembering. The views surged. But more importantly, the tide shifted. The brands that had rushed to defend Liana grew quiet. One, her biggest sponsor, publicly withdrew, citing concerns about brand alignment and narrative manipulation. Ellie texted me one sentence. The fracture is now a fault line. And I knew exactly what that meant. We weren't just breaking her story. We were building mine. The video was only 38 seconds long. Shot in soft light, from a slightly elevated angle, Liana's signature style. It opened with her sitting cross-legged on the carpet, arms wrapped around our son, Emil, who stared somewhere off camera. Tell them how you feel, she whispered, brushing his hair aside. He hesitated, lips parted, then murmured something barely audible. I don't want to see Dad right now. The video cut to black. No context. No explanation. But the internet didn't need one. This is heartbreaking. She's doing what she can to protect him. I hope the court listens. I watched the clip from my office, hands clenched on the desk. Emil's voice sounded flat, coached, like a line read at rehearsal. Ellie, sitting across from me, replayed it with forensic calm. There's a subtle eye flick before he speaks, she said. He's checking her, looking for approval. We already had experts reviewing Liana's digital behavior, but this was different. This wasn't branding. This was psychological warfare. She's not just using them, I said. She's scripting them. That night, I called my lawyer and requested an emergency motion, a court-appointed child psychologist, neutral and independent, not just to evaluate the children, but to assess influence and pressure. The court approved. Barely. Liana tried to stall the process, citing stress and illness. Her lawyer filed for a delay. Denied. Ellie and I waited outside the psychologist's office the day Emil and his younger sister, Mira, were brought in. Liana didn't show. A nanny delivered them in silence. Emil didn't look at me. Mira waved with hesitation. She's going to panic, Ellie said as we watched them disappear behind the frosted glass doors. She's losing control of the script. 2 days passed, then 3. On the 4th, I received a draft of the preliminary report. While too early for official findings, the language said everything. Observed hesitance in free expression, signs of suggestive reinforcement, possible scripted emotional responses. I sat with the pages in my lap, breathing through the burn in my chest. I don't care about winning anymore, I said quietly. I care about undoing the damage. Ellie didn't reply. She just nodded. But the war wasn't over. The next day, Liana uploaded a new post. Not video this time, but a collage of screenshots. doodles from Emil, old family photos, a quote in script font that read, "A mother's love never doubts, never questions, never stops." Caption, "I won't let them be erased from my story. We're healing. Together." Comments poured in. "This is how you fight with grace. Your kids are lucky. Stay strong, mama." But one caught my eye. A quiet message from a stranger. "I watched your son's eyes. He looked scared. The fracture was widening. And soon, it would split the whole house." The first time I heard David Glassman speak, it was through a podcast. Gravel voice, no nonsense, the kind of journalist who peeled back systems, not scandals. He didn't care about celebrity gossip. He cared about the machine that made gossip profitable. Ellie reached out to him under a burner alias, sending him a clean version of our findings. Not about Liana specifically, but about the mechanics of empathy monetization. Within hours, he replied, "Let's talk." 2 days later, his exposé dropped. The grief industry, how digital personas manufacture victimhood for profit. No names, no direct accusations. But the details were unmistakable to anyone watching Liana's feed. He broke it down like a forensic report. How emotional narratives were being scripted, how public breakdowns were scheduled for maximum engagement, how entire agencies specialized in controlled collapses for influencers who needed a sympathy boost. Online suffering, Glassman wrote, has become a product. And like all products, it's been optimized. The impact was immediate. Her followers, once rabidly loyal, began to hesitate. The comment section slowed, then fragmented. For every heart emoji, a doubt appeared. She doesn't feel real anymore. This feels too curated. Why do all her tears drop at golden hour? And then came the next hit. Someone inside the PR agency, not Chris, someone deeper, leaked internal schedules, publishing times, A/B tested captions, even versions of the now famous motherhood video with alternate endings. One version had Emil saying, "I miss Dad," before being cut off mid-sentence. That version never aired. Glassman got everything, and he published it all. The backlash didn't come as a wave. It came as erosion, slow, steady, relentless. Influencer marketing brands began quietly pulling their tags from her past posts. One partnership vanished overnight. Another released a vague statement about realigning our values. Ellie read it all in silence, then said, "We need to let this breathe. Let her own audience turn." I agreed. We stepped back. No more leaks. No more videos. We gave the truth room to echo. Meanwhile, the psychologist's follow-up report landed in my inbox. This time, it was firm. Consistent indicators of external scripting in child responses. Clear emotional reinforcement patterns traced to one parent. Recommendation: immediate cessation of public content involving minors. It was the missing cornerstone. But there was one more file still coming. Evidence of financial manipulation, misused brand funds, receipts tied to my accounts. Liana didn't know it yet, but the storm she thought she controlled had just shifted directions. And she was standing in the eye. The courtroom was cold, clinical, and built for silence. Pale wood panels, white fluorescent light, no cameras. Just a half circle of chairs and a single long table where truth was supposed to sit like fact. It was a closed session. No public, no press. Just the judge, the lawyers, the experts, and us. I sat on one side with my attorney. Liana sat across, expression hard as marble. She wore a soft gray sweater, hair loose, no makeup. The optics of restraint. But her right hand tapped constantly on her knee. A tell. The first to speak was the court-appointed psychologist. She stood, composed, voice steady. In my professional opinion, she began, both children, Emil and Mira, exhibited signs of rehearsed speech when discussing their father. These rehearsals appear externally influenced. Direct prompts were not recorded, but the pattern suggests preconditioned phrases. The judge nodded, taking notes. Liana didn't flinch. Next came the forensic metadata analyst. He confirmed the fabrication of the handwritten journal that had gone viral. The creation timestamp on the file predates its public appearance by less than 48 hours, he said. Moreover, GPS data places the tablet in a commercial editing suite during creation, not at home. Liana's attorney objected, irrelevant, prejudicial, overruled. Then came Chris. He entered the room in a simple button-down, no tie, eyes low. He spoke softly, but with precision. I participated in the development of content designed to provoke audience empathy, he said. We scheduled drops to coincide with custody hearings. I drafted messages meant to evoke panic and urgency. He looked at the judge. We called it the shadow strategy. It was all about framing. Liana didn't look at him. Then it was Ellie's turn. She laid out our findings. The emotional dissonance scans, the alignment between peak engagement and manipulated narratives, the timeline of content designed to shadow court activity. She ended with one line. This wasn't just deception. It was performance optimized for control. Finally, the judge asked for one-on-one interviews with the children. We waited in the hallway, not speaking. 20 minutes later, the door opened. The judge returned alone. She sat, adjusted her glasses. The court finds sufficient evidence of psychological influence and digital exploitation. Effective immediately, full custody returns to the father. Any public content involving the children must cease. Violations will be treated as contempt of court. Liana's lawyer whispered. She didn't respond. She just stared forward, as if waiting for the director to yell cut. There was no director, and no script left to follow. Outside, the city buzzed as if none of it had happened. But for me, everything had changed. I had my children. I had the truth. And now, I had the power to choose what came next. The house was too quiet. Not the cold silence from before. This was something warmer. The kind of quiet that wrapped around you like a worn sweater. Familiar. Safe. Emil and Mira sat cross-legged on the living room floor, playing a card game they made up 5 minutes ago. I watched from the kitchen, flipping pancakes that were browning too fast on one side and undercooked on the other. They didn't care. They laughed anyway. It was the first sound of real peace I'd heard in months. When I set the plates down, Mira whispered, "We're not recording this, right?" I shook my head. Never again. Later that day, Ellie stopped by with a cardboard box. Inside, printed articles, screenshots, excerpts from Glassman's piece, transcripts of comments, legal documentation, everything. A time capsule of what we'd lived through. You should own your own story, she said. Not let hers be the last word. I looked through the pile. Headlines blurred together. Phrases like empathy fraud, emotional economy, narrative warfare. It felt surreal, like reading a biography of someone I used to be. I don't want revenge, I said. I want purpose. Ellie smiled. That's the cleanest kind of win. She pulled out a USB drive and placed it beside the box. I kept everything modular, she said. If you ever want to build a platform, something that protects others from what you went through, it's all here. The idea had been flickering in my mind for weeks, but now it burned clearer. A space for people whose reputations were destroyed by digital narratives. Not to rant, not to fight, but to reclaim their voice, their version, their name. I sat down at my desk that night and registered a domain. No filter. Foundation. By morning, the framework was live. Nothing flashy. Just a landing page, a message. You are more than someone else's storyline. The inbox filled faster than I expected. Men, women, professionals, teenagers. Stories of being vilified, edited, erased. Most didn't want justice. They wanted clarity, and I could give them that. Later that week, the kids and I drove out of the city, windows down, no destination. Just movement. I told them we'd travel soon. Florence maybe, or Japan, or somewhere no one knew our names. They didn't ask about their mom. I didn't bring her up. That night, after bedtime stories and pillow fights, I stood on the balcony as the city exhaled below. My phone buzzed. A text from Ellie. You built something. Real this time. I replied. So did you. She sent a photo, a blueprint sketch titled Project Veritas, Public Use Engine. 2 names at the bottom, hers and mine. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like a signal. The mic was simple. No filter, no compressor, no artificial warmth. Just one voice, one lens, and the steady glow of a status light that told me the world was listening. I sat at my desk, camera steady, heart calm. Hey, I said. No intro, no music, just me. The chat started to fill, but I didn't look. This wasn't for them. Not really. It was for the version of me that almost disappeared. I want to talk about silence, I said. Not the kind we give others, but the kind we survive in. I spoke about the slow erosion of identity, how easy it is to let someone else tell your story, how algorithmic love can turn to exile with one bad headline. I didn't mention Liana by name. Didn't mention the trial, the betrayal, the wreckage. I talked about control. I thought staying quiet was the noble thing, the strong thing. But silence can rot you from the inside if someone else fills it with lies. I paused. Let the weight hang. My kids are asleep upstairs. They don't know I'm broadcasting. That's the point. This isn't content. This is context. And I'm reclaiming mine. Messages popped in, visible from the corner of my eye. This hit deep. I needed to hear this. You're not alone. I closed the stream after 15 minutes. No outro. No pitch. Just a click. Final. Upstairs, the house was still. I walked past Myra's door, cracked slightly. She'd drawn stars on her ceiling, glowing faint green in the dark. Emil's tablet sat charging on the hallway shelf, screen locked, no social media apps in sight. I stepped onto the balcony. The city moved beneath me, indifferent and alive. My phone vibrated. A message from Ellie. Veritas engine is live. Public access beta. You want to break it in? I typed, not tonight. I'm off-grid with the kids tomorrow. She replied with a smile emoji and one word. Good. I slid the phone into my pocket and looked up. A few stars were barely visible between the skyscrapers. This wasn't vindication. It wasn't victory. It was freedom. No scripts. No filters. Just breath. Just now. Somewhere in the noise, Liana was probably drafting another comeback, spinning the next version of herself. That was her cycle. Her stage. I'd left that story and started building my own. I turned to go back inside, just as Emil's bedroom door opened. He rubbed his eyes. Can't sleep. I opened my arms. Come here. He curled into my chest. No cameras. No performance. Just a boy. Just a father. Just truth. Truth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, quietly, insistently, beneath the noise of applause and curated suffering. I learned that in the stillness, after the courts had closed and the cameras had died, when the children fell asleep without needing to pose for anyone, what I lost was visible: reputation, privacy, love as I once defined it. But what I gained was invisible and unshakable: clarity, presence, and the kind of strength that doesn't need to be seen to be real. People like Liana don't just distort facts, they commodify feeling. But no filter lasts forever, not when the light is honest enough. This wasn't a war for narrative. It was a reclamation of self. And in the end, I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I finally stopped performing. Sometimes the loudest freedom is the one that never asks for applause.